The marble floors of the Blackwood mansion shimmered under the glow of its crystal chandeliers, a place where silence had its own voice. Zara Washington, a 24-year-old housekeeper from the south side of Chicago, moved quietly through the grand halls as she dusted priceless artwork. To her, this was just another day in a house that didn't feel like home. A palace built for one of the richest men in America, Darius Blackwood. When the news broke on television that morning, billionaire Darius Blackwood killed in helicopter crash, Zara froze mid-step, the feather duster trembling in her hand. The anchor's words echoed through the marble room like a cold whisper. The man she had worked for, the man she had come to quietly respect, was gone. At least, that's what the world believed. Before I proceed, I want you to do me a quick favor. Hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and drop your country in the comments. I'd love to know where you're listening to me from. Thank you. 2 years earlier, Zara had been drowning in debt and disappointment. A business administration degree from community college hadn't opened many doors, and student loans were tightening around her neck like chains. Then came the job posting. Live-in housekeeper. Blackwood Estate. She'd applied on a whim, never expecting to get an interview, let alone be hired. The first time she stepped into that mansion, she felt like an intruder in someone else's dream. Every corner of the house screamed wealth: 30 rooms, an indoor pool, a wine cellar larger than her entire apartment building. The air smelled of polished wood, expensive perfume, and quiet power. Mrs. Peaton, the head of staff, was the kind of woman who looked like she'd been born in a uniform, precise, sharp, and humorless. "Mr. Blackwood values privacy above all else," she'd said, her heels striking the floor like a metronome. No unnecessary conversation, no personal questions, and never, under any circumstance, disturb him during work hours. When Zara first met Mr. Blackwood, she had expected a man full of arrogance, someone who looked at his staff like tools. But what she saw instead was something else, a man who looked exhausted. Darius Blackwood was tall, silver-haired, and impeccably dressed, but his eyes were distant, like they carried memories too heavy to set down. "I don't need friendship," he said flatly during their first meeting. "I need competence. Can you do that?" "Yes, sir," Zara replied. "Then you're hired," and that was it. No handshake, no warmth, just an agreement of necessity. At first, life at the mansion felt mechanical. The staff moved like clockwork, every action timed and rehearsed. But the longer Zara stayed, the more she noticed the cracks in the marble perfection. Mr. Blackwood lived like a ghost, precise in his routine, yet completely detached from the world around him. He rarely had guests, rarely smiled, and spoke only when required. Yet beneath that icy composure, Zara sensed something, a quiet ache, a loneliness that no amount of wealth could erase. Small clues began to appear. The billionaire who supposedly cared only about profits spent his mornings reading not just financial news, but local stories, tragedies, community struggles, people in need. One morning, she caught him reading about a family who'd lost their home in a fire. When she gently commented on the story, he surprised her by asking, "What would you do if you were in their position?" She answered simply, she'd start with food, shelter, education for the children. 2 days later, that same family was on the news again. An anonymous donor had rebuilt their home and funded college for their kids. Zara knew exactly who that donor was, but she never said a word. The more she observed, the more contradictions she found. Mr. Blackwood spent his Sundays alone, disappearing for 2 hours without explanation. Curiosity eventually got the best of her. She followed him one morning and discovered him at a community kitchen, wearing a worn baseball cap, quietly serving soup to the homeless. No cameras, no entourage, just a man rediscovering his humanity in a place that had none to give back. Zara's heart softened toward him. She realized that behind his cold exterior was a man who had given so much to the world, yet received nothing that truly mattered: love, family, warmth. His ex-wife had left years ago, taking their children with her, both of whom now lived in New York and barely spoke to their father. His brother, Theodore, visited only when he needed money, which was often. Zara overheard many of those visits. Theodore's voice would boom through the halls, all false cheer and desperation. "Just a small loan, Darius. 2 million. I'll pay you back, I swear." And Darius, weary and defeated, would eventually give in, though they both knew repayment would never come. Each time, his spirit seemed to dim a little more. One evening, after another tense visit from Theodore, Zara found Mr. Blackwood sitting alone, surrounded by old family photos. The light from his study lamp cast long shadows across his face, making him look older than his years. She hesitated before speaking. "Sir, is there anything I can get for you?" He looked up slowly. "Do you have family, Miss Washington?" She told him about her mother in Alabama, her grandmother who raised her, the simple traditions that bound them together. For the first time, he listened, truly listened. And when she said, "Kindness costs nothing but means everything," he smiled. A real smile, small, fragile, but genuine. That moment was a turning point. The silence in the house began to shift. Mr. Blackwood started asking questions about her life, her dreams, her plans. When she mentioned she wanted to build a community center in her old neighborhood, he didn't dismiss it like a rich man humoring the help. Instead, he leaned in. "What kind of programs would you offer?" he asked. Zara hesitated, then spoke with passion. Tutoring, computer skills, safe spaces for kids. He listened carefully, his eyes lighting up in a way she hadn't seen before. "Would you mind if I looked at your business plan?" he asked. 2 days later, he called her to his study. Her simple plan had been transformed, annotated, expanded, and improved with his notes. He'd found potential locations, grants, and funding options. "You're thinking too small," he said. "You could help not 50 kids, but 500. Zara was stunned. "Sir, I could never afford something like this." "Not on your own," he said softly. "But perhaps with the right partner." And then, with a look of quiet sincerity, he said, "I want to help you build it. Not as charity, as a partnership." That night, Zara couldn't sleep. She realized that this man, the billionaire the world thought was cold and unreachable, had begun to change. Or maybe, she thought, he was finally becoming who he truly was before life hardened him. By morning, her decision was made. She accepted his offer. And from that day forward, something beautiful began to bloom. Not just a project, but a friendship, built on trust, respect, and shared purpose. Over the next several months, the Blackwood mansion transformed into a hive of quiet activity. Architects came and went, blueprints filled the study, and Zara found herself sitting beside Mr. Blackwood, learning how to turn her dream into reality. What began as a modest community center idea was evolving into something extraordinary. A multi-purpose hub with classrooms, computer labs, and mentorship programs. Mr. Blackwood no longer looked like a man waiting for his life to end. He was energized, vibrant, and often smiled. Something that startled even Mrs. Peaton, who had never seen such warmth in him. "You're teaching me more than any professor ever could," Zara told him one day. "Nonsense," he replied, though there was a spark of pride in his eyes. "You already had the vision. I'm just showing you how to make the world see it." But the world, as always, had its storms. News of Mr. Blackwood's declining health began to circulate. He brushed it off as exhaustion, but Zara noticed the way he sometimes gripped his chest, the way he paused mid-sentence as if fighting to catch his breath. She urged him to see a doctor. He promised he would. Weeks later, tragedy struck. At least that's what everyone thought. Reports broke that his helicopter had crashed en route to New York. There were no survivors. The media exploded, the stock market trembled, and the Blackwood family descended upon the mansion like vultures. Theodore raged about inheritance, while the children, Marcus and Sophia, demanded control of the company. Zara was devastated. She had lost more than an employer. She had lost a friend. She continued her duties quietly as the house filled with lawyers and reporters. It wasn't until the reading of the will that everything changed. In a quiet, wood-paneled office downtown, the attorney read the words that silenced the room. "To my loyal employee and dear friend, Zara Washington, I leave the entirety of my estate and controlling interest in Blackwood Enterprises. The room erupted in disbelief. Theodore shouted. Marcus slammed his fist on the table, and Sophia burst into tears. Zara sat frozen, unable to breathe. There must be some mistake, she whispered. But there wasn't. Darius Blackwood had made his final move, one that would expose everyone's true nature. Days later, as she sat alone in the mansion that now legally belonged to her, Zara received a letter delivered by hand. The handwriting was unmistakable, neat, deliberate, and familiar. If you're reading this, it means my plan worked, the letter began. Don't be alarmed, I'm not dead. I needed to disappear. The vultures circling my fortune have forgotten what matters. You, Zara, reminded me of that. He explained everything. His illness was real, but his death was staged. He had wanted to see for once who would mourn him sincerely, and who would mourn their lost inheritance. Predictably, only Zara had lit a candle for him in the chapel. You showed me kindness when no one else did. You spoke to me like a man, not a paycheck. The community center is yours now. Use the company's resources to finish what we started. Change lives. That will be my true legacy. Zara wept as she finished the letter. She didn't care about the money or the mansion. She cared about honoring his final wish. Within a year, the Blackwood Community Initiative opened its doors on Chicago's South Side, the same neighborhood Zara had grown up in. The building stood as a symbol of redemption, painted with murals of hope, laughter, and possibility. Hundreds of children filled its halls, learning, dreaming, and building futures Darius would have been proud of. The media eventually caught wind of her success. "The billionaire's maid who changed a city," the headlines read. But Zara never sought the spotlight. She knew the truth. This wasn't her story alone. It was his too. Late at night, when the center's lights dimmed and the city grew quiet, Zara would step into her small office, where a framed photograph of Darius Blackwood sat on her desk. Beside it was his letter, worn, creased, and precious. "Kindness," she whispered softly. Really was the best investment, and somewhere, far away from the reach of cameras and fortune hunters, a man with silver hair and a faint smile watched the news on a small television in a quiet cabin by the lake. When he saw the children laughing in the courtyard of the Blackwood Center, he nodded to himself and whispered, "Thank you, Miss Washington." The world believed Darius Blackwood had died a billionaire. But the truth was far greater. He had lived long enough to die a good man.